Welcome to our 12th episode of the Water Talks podcast, where water treatment practice, policy, and innovation receive the focus they deserve. I'm your host, Els Vanbeckevoort. I'm happy to be joined by my co-host, this time not in the hot seat, Scott Bowron. Good morning, Scott.
Good morning, Els. It's so nice to see you and Ludo. And today we are diving into a very fascinating and often misunderstood topic of disinfectant byproducts, formation and prevention around swimming pools. And we are thrilled and very excited again to host Mr. Ludo Feyen, all the way from Belgium. And we're going to walk through that with Ludo. Good morning, Ludo, and welcome.
Good morning, everybody.
Hey, Ludo. For our listeners, Ludo is the CEO of Labo Derva, and they're a cutting-edge microbiology and chemistry laboratory in Belgium. Ludo has a professional background in water engineering and advanced chemistry. He's been a key advisor to the European regulatory agencies. He's a recognized expert in his field, and we're really, happy to have him with us again because he's been a trusted mentor to myself personally and to many in the industry for many years as well. So anyway, nice to see you again, Ludo. Thanks for making some time for us. I know it's a busy day for you there.
You're welcome. No problem.
How are you, Ludo? Things are going well?
Yes.
We were having a brief discussion about football before we went on live, so we'll just bring that back. And very excited here to have Canada going to the semifinals of Copa, which is the aligned with the Euro Cup. And I know your team in Belgium didn't go through, but France is playing tomorrow.
Who are you supporting now, Ludo?
Holland, I don't have another choice then.
It's always good to watch good sport, no matter what the team.
Yeah.
Maybe not there.
I agree. Ludo's a big soccer fan for sure, but not so. Too bad what happened in Belgium, Ludo, but we'll get there next time. We are getting into a serious topic today, but I guess before we really get into the disinfection byproduct topic, maybe Ludo, can we talk a little bit about basic pool management? Like why for our listeners, and I'm sure everybody knows that a little bit. Let's start there. Why do we need to treat pool water?
Well, it's very easy. Why do we need to treat the pool water? Because if we don't do, we are going to kill the people in the end.
Yes.
And it is a very little element that makes the big problem, and we call it the bacteria or a virus, and we don't see it, and everybody has with him millions of bacteria and a lot of viruses and so on and so on and so on. So if there is nothing into the pool water what kills those bacteria, everybody is going with other elements home. The bacteria from the one is going home with the other, and that's what we don't want. And therefore, we have to follow some rules, and the rules are everywhere in the world the same, not only in England, not only in Belgium, not only in Canada. And therefore, we need some treatment, and better than that, not only treatment, also knowledge of treatment.
Yes, how to treat.
Too much is also not good, and too little is not good either. So that's a little bit the question: what is good, what is bad, and how can you do it without hurting people who are coming to swim in your pool? That's in fact what it is.
I agree. But maybe then, what are the key elements for water treatment in a pool environment? So, what are those treatment steps? Maybe we could walk that through for just a moment.
Yeah. First of all, the water has to be perfectly clear. Because if you don't see the bottom anymore, you don't see people who are staying on the bottom from the pool either, and that's dangerous. That's the first question. That's the first, not question, the first element. And then the treatment, we need something to kill all these billions of bacteria who bring into the pool or brought into the pool with the people who are coming to swim. And we don't want to have the problem that I am going home with the bacteria from somebody else and other ways around. So we need to do something that makes the water so healthy that it is healthy to come to swim, and that we don't have troubles when we go home and we start again a job somewhere or whatever it is. Yeah. And on the other hand, there is already a long time that we do swimming pool water treatment like this, and most of the time we have a good success. And the success is also part of the water treatment plant. If you have a good plant, I don't think you have a problem. If you have a bad plant, I think you cannot get good swimming pool water. That's a little bit the summary
It's
of what I think. That's water treatment.
for sure it's connected. I would agree. So maybe then, Ludo, where does water chemistry fit into this whole picture, right? So regarding disinfection, chlorine types, and levels, pH, like maybe we could start there.
Yeah. Okay. Chlorine, anyhow, is a necessary evil. Hmm? When you put too much chlorine in the pool, you don't kill only the bacteria, but also the people. That's not what we want. I think we only want to kill the bacteria. So the rate of chlorine in the pool has some limits in two directions. Too much is not good, and too little is not good either. So we need some equipments, and we know that already, who are able to get the concentration of the free chlorine level, like we call it, within the limits what we want to go. Too little is a problem. Too much is also a problem. So it has to be about all right. And the most important parameter of all is, of course, the pH, because if you don't have the right pH, you can do it with your chlorine, whatever it is, as good as you want to do it, but you will never get to a good result. And that's also the start for the disinfection byproducts. Is also a product like this. The problem by the best disinfection byproduct starts also with pH and chlorine concentration. And
So
of course, people, but the swimming pool without people is not a swimming pool.
Ludo, when you're talking about proper pH, can you just review for everyone what, in your mind's eye, what does that sound like or look like? What kind of pH would be your ideal for those who
Okay,
are not familiar?
the regulation in Belgium and Holland says the pH has to be between 7.6, 7.0 and 7.6. But
Seven
that's
point.
a wide range
That's
for a pH.
allowable, but what do we? What's your bullseye?
We think, we know, we don't think it anymore, but you know that the most important pH is 7.3.
7.3.
And you have a limit from 7.25 to 7.35. And I think if you have an automatical system, he has to be able to keep the pH in the pool water between the 7.25 and the 7.35. And then we can say on one side that we don't need too much chlorine to have a good disinfection, and on the other side, we also avoid the formation of a lot of other disinfection byproducts.
Right.
That's all what we want. It's easier to say than to do. I agree with that, but that's the way we have to think, and we have to try to get the pool water as safe as possible for the clients who come in and pay for the use of the water in the pool.
Absolutely. And so when you say disinfectant, in Canada, we use sodium hypochlorite, liquid chlorine, uh, calcium hypochlorite. Um, we use dichlor, trichlor, and those are kind of the main ones. And then gas is still used a little bit, but not generally. And then there's bromine. And when you're talking about disinfectant and pH, does it matter which type of disinfectant? The pH needs to be there.
Yeah, yeah. The pH for bromine is of course different for the pH of chlorine, but I think with the knowledge we have on this moment, that bromine used in a swimming pool is the baddest idea you can have.
The baddest, is
Because
that what you
The
said?
worst, yes, the
The
worst
worst.
idea.
yeah, and I try to explain that by bromine we create some bromate, and by chlorine we create some chloride. It's the same family, it's only a halogen difference from each other. But for the bromine, you can have a maximum concentration of 1.5 milligram a liter, and for the chlorine, you can have a maximum concentration of 30 milligrams a liter. I think that says enough about the how you call that, the
Toxicity.
danger, the toxicity of the products in the pool water. And
Wow.
till this moment, I don't think there is a better product than chlorine.
Yeah, no, that's true. And maybe Ludo, then going back a little bit, then because Scott, you're way ahead of me, brother. What are disinfection byproducts? Like, what are they? And how would you describe this to our audience? Like, what are they? Are they, what groups are they in? What type of disinfection byproducts are there?
Yeah. Here at this meeting, he's coming with us now.
Ah, nice.
Yeah.
Hi, Gerard.
Uh, so, uh, yeah, we have two kinds of disinfection byproducts. The first item is the carbon situation coming from the organical material what people less into the pool when they are cleaning themselves during a swimming uh, situation or
Session.
whatever.
Yeah. Swimming
Session,
session.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And on the other hand is of course the chlorine, and the two together create a very bad product. And it's what we call chloroform. That's the chloroform. It's this product that we are creating, and they have a very bad reputation regarding to the health of the people.
Yeah. And Ludo, maybe just so that we can explain it a little bit further, because like I say, mostly what we are familiar with or what people are familiar with is, trichloramines, right? So that's what they think is disinfection byproducts, but that's not all. So you've just described, there's also what we call, like in the larger group are called volatile organic compounds, VOCs. And within that group, we have kind of the chlorine, kind of the chlorate and chloroform groups, but we also have the brominated disinfection byproducts. We have we have a whole host of groups, I guess, and maybe it would have been useful to have a slide, although most of the people are listening to this podcast. So if you imagine, there's more than 600, and I forget now, it's almost 700 different disinfection byproducts that they found, and there's different groups within all of those, kind of within those 660 whatever it is, number of disinfection byproducts. But it's much more than just trichloramine. So maybe start and talk a little bit about trichloramine and what that specifically is and how that differs from the trihalomethanes, the chloroforms, the bromoforms, all of those other groups that we were just talking about.
So we have two kinds of disinfection products. The one is the reaction of chlorine with carbon coming from the organical products used by the people into the water. Yeah. And on the other side, we have the nitrogen compound. Huh? We all know on this moment that every bather is losing about 30 to 50 milliliters urine in the water during one swimming session. So that's a lot of nitrogen compounds who are coming into the pool.
And even
And
if they've been to the bathroom, right? Like that's just everybody.
even yeah, yeah, they're not going to the bathroom before they go into the pool. They lose a lot of more urine into the water, and urine is the product who is reacting with chlorine to give the mono, the di, and the trichloramines. And the mono and the di are not very dangerous for the health of the people, but the advantage of the trichloramine is that it is a smell what we don't like.
Yeah.
And for that reason, it's not how you say that a good idea to put too much of this into the pool.
and
Yes.
and that's what people generally know as the
Yeah,
smell of a pool, the chlorine smell,
and
right? And that's
that's
actually
what
trichloramines.
that's what we say, the chlorine smell. It is not the chlorine, the three chloramines in the pool water on its own who are very dangerous, but it is the three chloramines in the air what we zeggen dat inademen. What we breathe in, and that makes the problem of the pool water and give us an idea about good treated swimming pool water or bad treated swimming pool water. And once again, it's the pH who plays an important role in the formation of those kind of disinfection byproducts either. So the most important key factor for swimming pool water treatment is and stays pH in every way where you're going to have a look for it. Yeah.
Exactly. And we'll get into kind of some of the preventions in a little bit, perhaps. But maybe, Ludo, if we can just share with our listeners, like, are disinfection byproducts truly a health and environmental concern? Like, what is the issue? Obviously, everybody's familiar with, okay, the trichloramine smell. They don't want that. And people are busy with combined chlorine an awful lot. But now that it's been understood that there are two main categories, which is the carbon-based, combinations of chlorine with carbon-based material, if you like, within the swimming pool, and the urea-based reactions, the nitrogen-based reactions. So, how dangerous are they? I guess is this truly a health and environmental concern?
Yeah. It's a very slow working problem in the pool. You get something in it every time that you come into the swimming pool water when it is bad treated, and it stays in your body, and yeah, it makes on the end the bigger problem because you have more in the blood and so on and so on and so on, and on the end, yeah, it's not good for your health.
I read in
And
a paper that, if I can just interject, I read in one of the scientific publications that the route of exposure in a swimming pool is actually more dangerous than in drinking water. So we've done a lot of work at Senecotech in disinfection byproduct reduction in municipal drinking water systems, together with Ludo's laboratory as well. And that's a big deal. And there's regulatory limits for that in Europe and in Canada actually as well. But what I read in those scientific publications is that inhalation, which is what happens just above the pool surface, where you're taking a deep breath, and through your skin. And in fact, inhalation is the biggest route of exposure, which gives actually makes for more than 80%, or it's almost 80%, I believe, of the kind of the toxic input into your body is through inhalation. And then another one, of course, is through the skin. And then a third one is drinking, which most people don't drink pool water, unless we're let's say not voluntarily anyways. So maybe talking a little bit to that, because from that paper that I'm just mentioning to you, they saw that there was what they call a genotoxic response even within 20 minutes of somebody swimming in that water, that our genes start to change, and that there is actually some evidence of toxicology. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Oh, that's a very difficult subject. We know all that it is not easy to find out when we have the worst place of the worst time in the pool water, but
Right.
I think the real key factor of everything is, in fact, the treatment of the swimming pool water.
Yeah.
The better your swimming pool water is treated, the less organical material stays into the water, and the less urea each product stays into the water. And this is a combination of the two together. What is
Yeah.
not coming in or what is removed as quick as possible is not so harmful. But if it stays into the water and it builds up into the water, you have a concentration who is trying to going up all the time. That makes it a lot more difficult and, of course, also more dangerous for your health.
Yeah. And Ludo, maybe talking about health effects for just another moment. I know from an environmental perspective, once disinfection byproducts are formed, they are very difficult to remove from the environment, correct? Like, it's not easy to remove them. It's actually quite complicated.
Yeah. It is maybe easy to remove, but when you try to remove it on one side, you reduce the chlorine level on the other side because you need something what can take the volatile products into the water to them, and most of the time is active carbon. But active carbon on his side is also reducing the chlorine level, so
Right.
it's a circle where you never come out anymore if you
Yeah.
don't do it right.
If you don't do it correctly, yes. And then from an environmental perspective, obviously, we don't want to have all of this in our waste streams, right? So there's some disinfection byproducts that come out that are volatile, but some that stay in the water, that are maybe a little bit more persistent. And maybe we can talk about that for a moment, like bromate or chlorate. Maybe you could speak to that for a moment.
Yeah, chlorate most of the time is coming from the liquid chlorine what you buy somewhere, and we know that the liquid chlorine is going down with 1 gram per liter, yeah, every minute, every day. Sorry, not every minute, every day. That means when you start with a concentration of 130 of 150 grams a liter, after 30 days you only have 120, 15 or 120, and then you have to realize that the other 35 or 40 milligram of 40 grams per liter is going into the situation of chlorate. And is it bromine? It's going in the situation of bromine. And bromine, we don't need that concentration for the same disinfection results than for the chlorine. But like I told already in the beginning, bromine concentrations are a lot more dangerous and harmful than the chlorinated situation. So that's the reason why bromine in Belgium and in Holland is not allowed anymore.
Wow.
The only country who is using it a little bit more is France, but even there is now the time coming that they are going to remove it away from the regulation. So if you see that chloride is dangerous, like I told, from 30 milligrams a liter, and bromine already from 1.5 milligram a liter, then I don't think I have to make another picture. Then it's
So,
clear enough.
Ludo, some would say that short-term safety is more important than the long term. So, um, what? How do
Yeah,
you?
okay. I,
What's your perspective on that? Like, how do you deal with that? The short-term exposure versus long-term exposure, I guess we'll call it.
okay, but you don't say what I want to know. Eh? The long term exposure means that I stay an hour longer in the pool every time, or that I come every week 2 times or 5 times.
Right.
That's a big difference. So I think
Exactly.
if you stay in the pool too long, that the risk that you have to get problems with disinfection byproducts is a lot higher than when you come every day or every week a few hours, but not so much that you stay too long into the pool.
Yeah.
It's not.
Competitive
It's
swimmers,
yeah,
employees, those are the folks who are really
and people who work around who have to do a job who are all the time in a smell what is not the best item to breathe in and so on and so on. I think it's not one item. It's a more complicated system than to say if you stay too long in the pool you have problems with disinfection byproducts. It's not about the same.
hmm.
And it's more like the time also your personal hoe zeg je dat,
Hygiene,
not hygiene, gevoeligheid, hoe zeg je dat?
sensitivity. Yes.
Is also very important.
Yes.
Here we go.
Like,
And
yeah.
with aging population, Ludo, like would seniors be more at risk? Would that be a fair statement?
Well, I don't think so.
No.
I think it's more or less on one side the quality of the swimming pool water is very important. The
Gets back to the pool, the water.
yeah, you stay into the water. So if you get something, it comes from the water. Okay, I agree with you. When you stay an hour or when you stay 4 hours, it's also a problem in the way that your body is not used to stay too long into the water item, and the risk to get something from there is maybe on that moment a bit more, a bit higher than in the other situation. But
So when we're
we
talking
saw
about
it.
this, if I can ask, you go swimming. Let's say you're a competitive swimmer. You go swimming at 6 a.m. You get out of the water at 7:30 a.m. You get dressed. You go to work after, or you go to school or whatever. Do Would you say that people feel ill effects without really knowing where it came from at that time, or are you saying long term health like months, days, months, years?
I think it's a long-term situation. Yeah, it's not a
But you
short.
can feel unwell, Ludo, and you've said that, right? Like you can feel unwell having gone to a pool. I've felt unwell going to a pool where, there's been no obvious reason other than there's a chlorine smell, or, you've been swimming hard and you're kind of training, or you're trying to do lengths, and obviously, the inhalation of those toxins can have an impact on your general sense of well-being, right? So that's part of the challenge as well. It's not just, and it's true that, for cancer causing substances, Scott, they don't impact us today, but it's kind of the total environmental toxins that we're exposed to, everything together, they build up over time. And if you look at the studies that exist around disinfection byproducts, you'll see that, obviously the risk goes up for you to have bladder cancer, the risk goes up for, reproductive issues, the risk goes up for, different kinds of cancers that, you're not going to get today or tomorrow, but after a long time of environmental exposure, as well as potentially, other things, right? Not just the pool that you're swimming in, but there may be other toxins that we're exposed to and that we're not aware of. And so I think that's part of the challenge that we have to contend with in all of this. And old people, as we get older, then we have been exposed to a lot more. Our bodies are not so good at clearing things. And I think also the very young or the immunocompromised people are always much more sensitized to some of those things as well. Ludo, I wanted to maybe ask a little bit more about, how are disinfection byproducts formed? So I know we've talked in general terms, it's chlorine combining with organic matter, with carbon type substances or urea type substances. But are there things that can make it worse? So we talked already about, okay, high levels of chlorine, not having the good pH. But can we get into a little bit more detail? Like what other things can make it worse?
Water treatment, of course. If you have a bad water treatment system, you will never have a good swimming pool water. That's also important. Also, the time that your water is needed to get through the filter completely, that's also a problem. So your turnover is important. And of course, don't forget the concentration of the free chlorine level is also a very important system. You can say the more the better, but in this situation, the less the better. But you have to stay always in a situation that the low chlorine concentration is not going into the direction of a bacteriological contamination. So it's not so easy to say what do you have to do to get rid of everything. So it's personal hygiene who is important. Too much makeup into the water is also a problem. You have again a nitrogen problem, and so on and so on. It is a very how you say that wide problem what you can have, and the personal hygiene is one who most of the time is forgotten in this situation, but it is important and it stays important.
And maybe Ludo, so we've talked about filtration. Yes, having suboptimal filtration, not just the turnovers, but the speed through the filter, right? So to be able to remove particles and organic matter, you have to have filter aids. You have to have other things like that, and you can't put that water through the filter too quickly, because otherwise you're not going to have the removal rates that you want. So there's the filtration piece, but there's also UV, and I know that you've published a paper on UV with your esteemed colleague, Professor Apple, and that was specifically focusing on disinfection byproducts and UV. So maybe you could speak to that a little bit, because UV is widely used in North America, and it's kind of a part of a multi-barrier approach. We can understand that there may be value there, but it also unfortunately has led to a lot of formation of disinfection byproducts, particularly not the urea based, not the monodientrichloramides, because it deals with that quite well. But also, the paper that I read by Cimetière and Delat actually mentions that 90% of the chlorine is actually oxidized, right? So your free chlorine demand goes up dramatically, because I often hear people say, oh, you have UV, you need less chlorine, but that's actually not true at all, because it actually oxidizes the chlorine. And in the process, you have the capacity also for other disinfection byproduct formation. So maybe you could speak to that for a little bit.
Yeah. First of all, if you call about UV, you have to say which type of UV you are going to use. You have the monochromatic lamps and you have the polychromatic lamps, and that's a big difference. And most of the time, in most of the pools, what I have seen in Belgium also, it's a little bit changing now, and in Holland, but also in the rest of the world, is that they are using monochromate lamps. And a monochromate lamp is normally only a lamp with a wavelength around the 259.2 or whatever it is. And it's working in that side, but that's dangerous on the other side, that it creates a little bit ozone.
Mm.
The ozone is one of the best disinfection products what we know, but the ozone is also the best disinfection product what I know, what create bromate. And bromate is 30 times more dangerous than chlorate. So you see, every product and every system and every filtration system has his own sensitivity. And if you cannot do it with a good filtration system and a good water treatment, you try to do it with the UV radiation system. But don't worry, of don't worry, be carefully that you don't make it worse with UV than better than UVs. And the biggest problem, and that's something what I think we need to say, is also when people arrive in the pool, they stay under the water for 2 seconds. When people go home, they stay under the douche, under the shower, an hour. So we have to do it the other way around. We have to clean us before we go to the pool, and we come out. We have maybe a bit problem with chlorine smell, but that's not dangerous. All the rest is dangerous. But that is something what you never get in pool water problems. That is the problem. The
Yeah.
more you
So
do, the more you clean before you go in, the less your filtration system has to do, and the less the chlorine can do something about it.
I
But try
just
to do
want
it in your country. They kill you when you say that.
to. You're
Yeah,
exactly right. I just want to clarify. I think you're meaning what we would associate as low pressure and medium pressure UV. Is that correct?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that because most
yes,
people don't know
a
what we're talking
monochromatic lamp has a lower wavelength and is a low pressure
about.
system. Yes, indeed, Scott, you're
Medium
right.
pressure. I want to make
Yeah,
sure
A
that
monochromatic
for the
lamp has
most
only
people they
one
talk more
wavelength, eh?
medium,
one wavelength. Yeah,
one way.
And a polychromatic lamp has a lot of wavelengths, and every wavelength is destroying some product that is present into the water. And the chlorates, for example, are destroyed by, I don't know by head what the wavelength is, but every single problem that comes into the water has its own peak in the polychromatic lamp for destroying.
yeah. And Ludo, and polychromatic lamps in a chlorinated pool, like they're used here full stream, so not side stream, but continuously. Would you think that's a good idea as it relates to disinfection byproducts? Because we've done testing in water with both the low pressure monochromatic lamps and also for the medium pressure systems as well, and we still find elevated trihalomethanes, right? So we still find them even in polychromatic systems.
Yes, but why?
Go ahead, explain it to us.
Question is always why, huh? So if we use UV in combination with chlorination, I think we have a problem and we staying in the problem. So I think what the new generation of the UV installations are now in Belgium and Holland is that we remove the chlorine 100% before, and that means that we don't have a full stream with a side stream UV radiation system. We dose a little bit of peroxide into the water to get rid of the chlorine. We get a little bit overdoses to have something in the reactor to do its job. And that is also a big advantage for formation of disinfection byproducts because the lamp is continually using different water and so on and so on. So you build it up in the situation, and yeah,
Yeah. So
now
Scott, just for your benefit, and I've seen these systems firsthand, and they're quite clever. So it's a side stream UV system. It uses an advanced oxidation principle where it puts in a little bit of peroxide just before the lamp to, one, neutralize the chlorine, and secondly, have a little bit left to get this advanced oxidation process. So and that's side stream. So let's say in a large pool complex where you've got lots of swimming pools, you're going to be cycling, right? You're going to be cycling side stream. You're actually removing disinfection byproducts, right? You're not only helping to keep the water safe, but you're actually removing those disinfection byproducts. And that's really the interesting thing that Ludo, you published in your paper, right? So you can use it in that way where UV is not used to do your primary disinfection. UV is used as a supplementary tool for advanced oxidation to get rid of those products that you don't want in the water, and so that your chlorine can do its job much better.
Very interesting. Is there a
also
percentage advantage, like 10%, 20%?
What do you mean in terms of cycling?
Volume,
How
yeah. How does that, is that
Ludo,
standard
how
study?
often is that? Like it's every 15, 20 minutes it goes to another pool, if I remember correctly, something like that?
that is on the moment that you have more pools connected with one UV radiation system. But the best way is, of course, to have one radiation system in the pool so that the water is coming every turnover to through the lamp and remove the disinfection byproducts created in the pool. Huh? But
Wow.
yeah, it's an expensive item. So yeah, to make it a little bit payable, yeah, they have now a system, but it's not so successful, I think, with what says I do it 2 hours on that system and 3 hours on that system regarding to the population what is coming for a swimmer. But the best way is one single lamp. I mean, one item,
One UV reactor
one,
per pool.
one system per pool, where the turnover is creating the time that we have to reduce the disinfection byproducts from the swimming pool water.
But always on side stream, right? So
Yeah,
not an inline system, but a side stream system.
yeah, yeah. Indeed, yeah. If not, it's not possible to pay. That costs a lot of money, too
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. So it's side stream, Scott. So you're not, you're not having to over design,
Yeah,
because typically,
I can imagine sharing a UV system, but maybe in a huge system, but it's percentage that I'm kind of looking for. So if you had a thousand liters per minute, would you side stream 100 liters per minute of that, or is that a calculation, or how does that, or is it intermittent that because you're kind of talking about intermittent, where I think we're talking, I would assume it would be slipstream, where you're taking a percentage of that water out.
It's like with money, the more the better.
Okay.
It's the problem all the time, but you have to see on one side the cost and the other side the benefit.
and Ludo, where do you see, from what percentage do you see that cost benefit? So how much of the water are you cycling through it?
25% of the pool water
25.
every hour through the system is a good idea. But not a lot of people are going to do it because it costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
And don't
But
forget the energy, because the UV lamp also needs some energy.
right, right. And maybe pulling it back then, like most pools are not using these kinds of systems, I guess. And in fact, you wouldn't necessarily recommend using UV except in that way if you have a very high bather load and you have a very high, demand, if you like. So maybe then that's a good solution. But for in general terms, your perspective, I think, as I've understood it over the years, is good filtration, good chemistry, trying to get the balance in there so that you're not, and that's part of the work that we've done together, Ludo, in drinking water systems is, when you're overdosing chlorine, you're always going to run into problems because, and together with the organic content in the water, you're basically going to, continuously kind of make that problem worse. So generally speaking, from your perspective, UV is not essential in a swimming pool situation
Yeah,
if you have those other things.
yeah. Filtration is the most important item. The
Yeah.
better the filtration, the better the water quality will be. Of course, the quicker the water is going through the filter, the better water quality is also like that. But I think that has a more important role to get rid of the disinfection byproducts than only a UV radiation system, because that is something to do after we want to do something, but we don't know good how we have to do it. And then you come by a UV radiation system. It helps. I don't say it's nothing, it helps, but it is not the real item to get rid of disinfection byproducts only. In
Right.
combination with, yeah,
Yeah. In combination with, for sure. So maybe then, in Europe, you have regulations now in certain jurisdictions, very strict regulations regarding disinfection byproducts. Maybe for our listeners, can you just tell us what they are? Let's say for, trichloramines, let's say for trihalomethanes, bromate, chlorate. What are those levels?
we have regulations for VOCs, we have regulations for trichloramines, and we have regulations for chlorine levels and pH levels. Huh?
Yeah.
So the VOCs cannot be higher than zero point 0.5 milligram per cubic meter air.
So that's 50. No, sorry, go ahead. So that's basically trichloramines you're talking about now.
No, I talk about the VOCs,
Oh, the
the chlorine.
VOCs. Okay, trihalomethanes. Okay, so that's measured trihalomethanes. So that's 50 micrograms per liter, Scott. Yeah, go ahead, Ludo.
Yeah. So the chloramines in the air, yeah, is a little bit the same, but I think from zero point 0.2 to zero point 0.3 milligrams per cubic meter air, you have already a big problem. Hmm? So
Oh,
it depends. It depends how sensitive you are for everything. Eh?
Yeah.
If you smell it and you have a problem with it, it is time to go home.
And what's the limit for trichloramines? Because here in Canada, we don't have a regulatory limit. I think only BC, British Columbia, has 0.35 as the upper limit for trichloramines, and that's the limit that we work with in our digital platform. That's what we're trying to get people to be below 0.35. Is there a limit for trichloramines in Europe?
We don't have a limit for trichloramines in the water, and we only have a limit now for
Yes,
trichloramines in the air. That's
I
not the
see.
same.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
the way how we try to take away from high concentrations of combined chlorine is, of course, that we not can go on this moment above the 1 milligram a liter in some countries, and for Belgium and Holland now 0.6 milligram a liter as combined chlorine. And
Yeah.
that's a reasonable,
0.6.
very reasonable low
Yeah.
concentration. Means a good filtration system, and certainly a good system that has to be sure that you have enough chlorine and pH in the pool to get the pool safety like it has to be.
Yeah, but maybe then you can mention what those chlorine levels are again for our listeners. What are the maximum allowable chlorine levels in an indoor pool and in an indoor hot tub?
An indoor pool between zero point 0.5 minimum and 1.5 max. For an outdoor pool, minimum zero point 0.5 and 3 milligrams a liter max.
Wow, that kind of
And
blows
for
the
a
doors off
whirlpool,
what we use here. We have
uh,
as we've spoken before, more chlorine is better philosophy for
to,
some
to
strange
be
reason.
killed. The more chlorine is better to be killed.
Yeah, yeah.
And Ludo, and hot tubs, what's the
Well,
concentration for a
we
hot tub?
had the concentration from zero point 0.5 to 3, but now in Holland they went back from zero point 0.5 to 1.5.
For hot
That is
tubs.
what next year is coming in. Because there you have a lot more troubles with gassing from 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 coming out of the water. Huh?
So they've reduced the hot tub back to 1.5.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
And
Wow.
it's more than enough. It's more than enough. You
Of
don't need
course.
if your
more.
Of
pH
course.
if your pH is good, as
If your
it's stated.
pH is 7.3, you can do it with
Yes.
this.
And maybe, Ludo, the other thing is that, not having a pH too low also is going to stop the formation of trichloramines or not move it into the trichloramine state as well. So maybe that's another thing to briefly mention.
Yeah, we know on this moment that from 7.3 and lower, the the the, the construction of uh, the formation of the trichloramines is coming in and will be worse, worse, worse. By 7, it's the first worst place to create for the trichloramines. Yeah.
So that's why, Scott, we talk about having 7.3 as the optimal pH, because once you start going a lot lower than that, so Ludo mentioned, I think earlier, 7.25 and 7.35, right, Ludo?
Yeah, and the mathematical system of today can do that. They
Mhm.
can stay within this two lines. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
interesting because I know some jurisdictions have actually started to allow the pH to drop to 7.0 to increase the efficacy more of the chlorination. And so what you're stating is that once you get to that certain level, now you're going to create other issues as a result of going too low with the pH. We have a struggle with the testing methods when we get that low as well, but just purely from a health perspective, that 7.3 it's really the sweet spot.
It's at between 725 and 735. It's possible on this moment to get the pH in that area, and then you don't have big problems, and it is more healthy than when you go lower. And when you go higher, then your flocculant is not working anymore, and you have turbidity water, and it is a big problem when you find somebody in the morning who stays in the evening and do the water.
Oh,
That's where that
Guys,
big.
you have to look for that also.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And I guess, Ludo, also, if your pH goes up, of course, you're going to need a lot more chlorine, right? Because your chlorine, isn't actually, disinfecting in the way that it should. Your chlorine speciation goes down as your pH goes up, and that also brings problems in and of itself too.
Yeah, regarding to the free active chlorine,
Hmm.
it's the relationship between free chlorine and the pH. Yeah, you need to be there around the zero point 0.3 anyhow.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting because we've been able to where we've worked with clients, and we do the measurements, and we start with trichloramines at 0.6 or whatever it was, I can't remember, and we start with trialomethanes that are over 100. Like once you start to do the things that you've described, we have seen every time that disinfection byproducts are they're well below the 50 micrograms per liter, which is the European level for trihalomethanes for VOCs, and they get well below the zero point 0.3 milligrams per liter for trichloramines that are going to be coming out into the air. And that's really, the encouraging thing in all of this is that, their water safety has gone up. So it's not that by reducing your chlorine concentration, you only do that after you've got a good pH management, right? Like once your pH is in that sweet spot, you can realistically then lower your chlorine a little bit. And then, the next thing, your disinfection byproducts are going to be significantly less, because it's always about concentration and contact time. Like those are the two things that impact it. And then the organic content in the water as well.
Okay, but you can't clean everybody with high pressure before it's coming into the pool.
That's the
Exactly.
number one lesson today.
Yeah, Scott, it's a possibility. Yeah, you don't have people anymore in the pool, so nobody is hurt anymore.
Oh
So
my
Ludo,
gosh.
and Els, I think I'll ask you the same question. I'm an operations person. How does an operator manage all this? How does it make it work? Especially if many people have limited tools at their facilities, and how do they get there? Where do you start? How do you get there?
It's
Understanding is obviously important, and then we want to make change. How do we get there?
I think
Good
it's one of
question.
our as one of our roles what we have, to try to make the people ready to go for swimming pool water treatment. It's not
Hmm.
something like fill up the pool, put a bucket of chlorine in it, and go on. It's a little bit more different than that. And
So knowledge, training, right? Which is what we're trying to do here with the podcast. And I think it's been very well received. Ludo, you mentioned before having good instruments.
yeah, good situation, good controlling system, and a good guy who follow it up.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. You
Education,
need, in,
education, education.
yeah.
Dedication. Yeah.
Yeah. We have to first know what we don't know, right? So, like getting a good laboratory analysis, understanding actually where the risk lies, where your baseline is, I think is absolutely essential, because once people see that, oh, hang on a minute, I thought I was compliant, but actually I've got, two times, three times, 10 times the regulatory limit, or the potential regulatory limit for disinfection byproducts. So monitoring is important, I think, in the first place. And then having those digital tools to help you understand kind of where you're at, and then being able to monitor correctly, right, Scott? Like I think we talk about this, I think every session that we've had so far, but like you can't underestimate the power of good data, like actually knowing what's going on within your pool system. And Ludo is a co-inventor of a method that we've developed for rapid trichloramine detection in the water that's going to be coming out into the air. And that's really useful, because you don't have to wait for a laboratory analysis in that sense to get a filter on your deck, because you can't do that every week anyways, like to have a filter on the deck and have the absorption and send it off to the laboratory. And that's not something that you can run your process with. So having some of those special tools that can help you, and simple, they're not that complicated, but they have to be really good to give you reliable data. And I think that's important.
And
Hey,
that's
Ludo, like
that's
to know,
immediate.
right?
That would be like a
Yes,
test on the spot testing.
on the spot testing. And it takes a couple of minutes, obviously maybe 5 minutes, because you need to be able to allow the different species of chlorine to develop. But having that visibility has just been so instrumental for our clients, because it's interesting that the trichloramines, of course, are not directly correlated with the volatile organic compounds like the THMs, but it's a good primary indicator, and it can tell you how it's going within your pool system. And generally speaking, if you manage your chemistry well, which is where we started out our conversation at the beginning, and Ludo, if you manage your chemistry well, you need good tools to be able to do that. But then generally speaking, you're going to get much better results. And I think that's kind of it's kind of like easy, but not. It's like, the simplest thing in the world, but not, because you've been used to something else. And like Ludo mentioned before, water chemistry is complicated. The water treatment process is complicated. Scott, you know that. Like, not every pool is different, right? Every pool infrastructure is different. Every mechanical room is different. Every water source is different. Like, you got so much variability in there. So generally speaking, getting a good visibility on their baseline and then moving from there. That would be my perspective, Ludo. I don't know if you wanted to add to that.
Yep.
Yep. No, I think he agrees. That's
I would,
good.
I would say that's agreed. Yeah, and
Maybe then, Ludo, how is it going in Europe with the new regulations? Are people able to manage it? Like, I'm just giving you a couple of small success stories, as we're working with public health inspectors, and Scott, spends a lot of time training these people who are all very open to learning, as well as, progressive operators, pool operators. We see some real positive progress, but I guess in Europe, the regulations are there. So how's it working?
Oh, it's hard to make understandable that this is the only good way. But till now we spoke about water quality. But also we started from last year. We started also to how you say that, to measure the concentration of the chlorate into the liquid chlorine who is delivered. They say
Aha.
it's fresh, but you don't know it. So since the time that we ask for a little sample when they deliver it on the pool, and they know that we are going to send that to the lab and to measure the fluoride concentration, I think we have pools who have the dirty liquid, and we have pools with the good liquid, because they know
Wow.
where they have to go with the good and where they have to go with the bad one. But yeah, the how you say that, the incoming analyze is more and more important. And second,
Absolutely.
that's a
and second item is,
interesting
yeah, the
discussion.
second item is the kind of salt who is used for making hypochloric acid, hypochloric, yeah.
Yeah. You're talking about ECA. You're talking about saltwater pools.
No. I thought we make chlorine from salt,
Yeah.
and normally we only have chloride in chloride,
Yeah. 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 Chloride.
CO6,
Yeah.
but we also have bromine in it. So if
Okay.
we have a mix of chlorine and bromine into that salt, we also have a mix of bromine and chlorine product what has to disinfect the pool.
Ah, yes.
So now we are still starting to measure the bromine concentration in the liquid chlorine on one side and in the drinking water coming in on the other side.
Wow.
Because bromate is a lot more dangerous than chlorate. Is
So
another.
those are really good takeaways. And Scott, we've told our clients to start insisting on certificates of analysis from the people who deliver the
Oh
chlorine to
wow,
their pool,
yeah.
and so that they can see when that batch was made and what it's supposed to, when kind of the production date was and what the shelf life is, and so on and so forth. But this takes it quite a bit further, Ludo, where you're actually taking a sample, sending it off to the laboratory, and seeing, what are the disinfection byproducts already in the batch of chlorine that you've received, which I think is a great idea, actually, because ultimately there's very little oversight, right, Scott?
Oh, I think there's zero, and
Those people,
so many
those people do
times
what they want.
people have
There is no
trouble and they
one.
don't know where it stems from.
Right.
Correct. So that's where my previous background was in wastewater, and this is back in the early '90s. We used to test it as it came in because we used thousands and thousands of gallons on, so we paid percentage, and there was quite a difference coming in. But now to say that the type of salt, that's a interesting fact. Great takeaway,
Yeah.
as you said, Alice.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I know we could, we'll probably have follow-up conversations about this topic, Ludo, but I think we've at least provided a little bit of an overview. Is there anything else that you feel like we should talk about, or that we need to add to our segment now? Or Scott, any other questions from you guys?
Well,
I think we have it there. We had it.
I I think what we do is, where are we heading? Right? Always, where are we heading?
I
We
think so.
we know today we have issues. People are constantly learning, and we want to understand that, and to try to help our industry. how do we move in the direction within, and we have very different frameworks for regulation here, even in Canada, they're by provincial, right? Some provinces don't have any regulation. Ontario, we're talking
Right.
to, let's say Ontario today, we have some regulation. Um, how do we get that water chemistry right and stay within our framework? Um, I know digital
Yeah,
tools is one
using
big
digital tools, I think, is key. Like using good instruments and digital tools, and like Ludo says, somebody who can help guide our operators along this process. I think, and that's an educational piece that we all three have embraced, I think, in a big way. And then having the capacity to be able to differentiate between, okay, this is not a, this is, you have no process insight yet, but getting you to that position of insight quickly, and then being able to make small incremental steps to move in the right direction. And, if you're measuring for disinfection byproducts, at least you know what you're up against. And then by addressing the different aspects of the system that we talked about, Ludo, and having those digital both monitoring tools, so digital hand meters using colorimetric, photometric principles, having the same measurement from your digital hand tool and your online control system, that has the capacity to, to operate along a very tight process, which is really what we're talking about. And, that doesn't just benefit your disinfection byproducts, that benefits your pocket, that benefits like everything that you do, because your water is going to be safer in the short term because your chlorine is going to be working better, and it's going to be safer in the long term because you're going to reduce or mitigate or remove as much as you can those disinfection byproducts that are otherwise going to be part of your normal daily reality. And I think that's how we get there before the regulatory agencies get to a place where, it's going to take time, right, for like different jurisdictions. And I know, Scott, the health inspectors that we've met with are great. They're open, they're aware, but, regulations take time. And Ludo knows that, how long it takes to get into a new regulation. So we can be progressive and be ahead of that curve.
And for your boss, sorry, Ludo, I'll just be real quick. When you, as
I
an
just
operator,
want to
selling
mention.
it, it's not only
Mhm.
cost savings, it's sustainable if you get on a
Right.
good thought and use good equipment. And I mean, that's what Lido does, is promote that idea. So,
Yeah,
And all for a healthy success. Eh?
yes.
that's right.
And what I think also, but that's maybe not part of this discussion, but controlling of the urea content into the swimming pool water is a very important item
I agree.
to the direction where we want to go. Eh?
Yeah.
What you don't measure, you don't know. But what you measure, you know. And if you know that where it is coming from, you maybe are a little bit more skeptical about it to get it into the pool.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's absolutely true. So urea on the one hand and trihallomethanes on the other hand. So those are the two samples that we take. But we have to, unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, thankfully, we have a laboratory partner in Europe who can do this for us. But, it's not easy to get urea samples analyzed in North America. So let's put it that way. And who know what they're doing as well. But yeah, having visibility on those two things will help you to understand what your precursors, because those are your disinfection byproduct, precursors, or your, right, exactly. Yeah,
It's
for
important,
sure.
yeah.
To measure is to know, as we say. Okay, great
Voilà.
conversation, guys.
Absolutely. Is there any other thoughts you have today, Ludo? When you're obviously saying testing is so important, clarity. I like that word, the clarity, and how important it is to the health of the pool. You said that very first thing today. Having that good pH, your filtration system, the integral part. We've had some conversation of filters and filtration, and I think there's more to come with that. Um, what other thoughts do you have about a swimming pool? Do you swim?
Not much.
Maybe that's a bad question. I know Elsa's a swimmer, so it's really important to her, not only for her business, but on a personal note, to say, I want to feel safe in the swimming pool. We always have to understand that. My thing to people when I do training is, you want that pool safe enough that you would bring your family in here and be really comfortable that they're here and be proud that you're
No
standing there. And that's how you want to think about that swimming
argument,
pool,
yeah.
not, man, I'm getting through it and I'm compliant.
Exactly. Yeah. Ludo, any final thoughts? I think otherwise we'll wrap it up together, and we'll put a pin in it for now. I think we'll be back to talk more about these topics. I know that there's a bunch of other topics that have been brought forward that we'll be exploring over the coming months. One being corrosion, and a bunch of other things too. But anyhow, any other final thoughts that you have for our listeners?
I think that was it for today now.
I agree.
I gotta tell you, Ludo. Every time I talk to you, I not only learn, but I the pieces come together more. The
It's important.
discussion
It's important.
on
It's like a puzzle. Eh?
it is a big puzzle. It is and it's such great insight today. So, as always, we just love having you on here and gaining insight. So, thank you very much for what you do for us, the industry,
Welcome.
and for the health of people.
Yeah,
So greatly
Voilà.
appreciated.
For the general health. Eh?
Right.
exactly. Yeah.
All right.
Well, thanks, Ludo. Thanks, Scott. Thank you all to our listeners for joining us today. You can re-listen to this episode by subscribing to our YouTube channel or connecting with us on Apple Podcast or Spotify. Don't forget to like, share, and smash that notification bell, please. We like that because then more people get to hear the really valuable insights that we're trying to put out there, because ultimately that's our goal. We're trying to, help our industry and make it, like Ludo says, make it healthier and better for everybody. If you have any questions about this topic, or future topics that you'd like to hear about, then please do email us at my water talks podcast my water talks rather at sanicotech.com. From Scott and myself and Ludo, thank you all and have a great rest of your day.